The level that parkour has progressed to since its conception is pretty mind-blowing. And there are many jumps and movements that in the early days of parkour would be considered really high level, and now are just kind of considered beginner. However, there is one jump that has stood the test of time ever since the beginning of the sport. And that jump is the Manpower Gap. Over the years, the Manpower Gap has been consistently leveled up time and time again. So in today's video, we're going to explore the evolution of the Manpower Gap.
Yes! Yes, no!
But before we get into it, I must shout out today's sponsor, Vite Ramen. Vite Ramen create high protein, super nutritious ramen noodles. Each pack comes with these 3 sachets, which contains all the protein and nutrients. Honestly, I find these perfect on a day like today, where I've been out training and I haven't got loads of time to do any cooking. Be sure to check the links in the description. I'll give you a code so you can get 10% off your orders. I'm gonna eat this now and get back to the video.
I've been forced to cycle here today because my car got a flat tire. And not only that, my bike, well, let me just show you. Located in the birthplace of parkour, Leeds, on top of a coincidentally well-named insurance company called Manpower. The Manpower Gap has been revered as parkour's most iconic gap ever since it was first done by David Bell in his legendary video called Speed Airman. It's hard to say exactly when Manpower was first ever done, but we do know the first person to ever do it was David Bell, who is, and I'm sure you're aware, the founder of parkour. I actually managed to get in contact with the founder of freerunning, Sebastian Foucan, who messaged David Bell to ask him when did he first do Manpower. And unfortunately for us parkour nerds, even David Bell doesn't remember when he first did Manpower. But what we do know is when it was first filmed. The first ever time that the Manpower Gap was filmed was in 1998. And that is that shot that was featured in Speed Airman. However, David Bell claims that wasn't the first time he ever did it. He guesses roughly in 1997 was the first time he ever done Manpower. Anyway, all that aside, this 2-second clip, without anyone really expecting it, would go on to be the most iconic jump ever done in parkour history. What I find particularly interesting about this clip is the fact that it kind of feels like a throwaway clip. Speed Airman was a really fast, high action edit of David Bell's movement. But I still find it crazy that the first time we ever saw Manpower was in a 2-second clip. And not only that, just the way it was filmed, it was so far away from below. Didn't really get a sense of scale for how big and impressive Manpower really is. The first time we would really get a sense of scale for Manpower was when it appeared on French national television.
Un record.
In 2004, David Bell would appear in the legendary film District 13. District 13 did the Manpower Gap justice. Filmed in slow-mo, really far away, it finally gave the Manpower Gap the scale and the awe that it deserved. District 13 cemented the Manpower Gap as the jump in parkour. In skateboarding, they have the Wallenberg set. In mountaineering, they have Everest. And in parkour, we have the Manpower Gap. What makes the Manpower Gap so special is the fact that even 20 years on, this jump is still considered extremely high level. To give you some perspective, the Manpower Gap, like the jump itself, is roughly 2 stories of drop. And not just that, the run up for this jump is so short. Like, it's probably 1, 2, and then go. And then once you've done your run up, you have an extremely thin wall to take off of. This jump is scary. David Bell and the Yamakasi didn't have people to look up to like we do today. They were literally the first people doing this stuff. David Bell completing the Manpower Gap for the first time ever was a leap into the unknown. Not even that long ago, Stora made a video of them going to the Manpower Gap to do it themselves.
Yes, look at that. Look at that. That's the most iconic parkour jump ever right there.
And even Josh Pommels, who is one of my favourite athletes, couldn't bring himself to do the Manpower Gap.
Let's go, this is you.
When me and my old team went there, the only person who did it was Greg. And even for him, it was an insane mental battle. For David Bell to do this 20 plus years ago is crazy. So now we know the history of the Manpower Gap, let's look at how the Manpower Gap evolved. Before we'd see any impressive level ups to the Manpower Gap, we would first need to see someone who wasn't David Bell or the Yamakasi do it. One of the earliest videos I could find of a team going to Lys came from Urban Free Flow in 2004, starring Parkour's own supervillain, Easy Styler.
When you see it on video, you don't appreciate it, you think it looks okay. When you actually see it up close, that's big.
This was one of the earliest videos I could find of foreign freerunners visiting Lys. Even in 2004, none of these freerunners were at the level where they could do the Manpower Gap. It wasn't until roughly 2006 to 2007 would people start to attempt the Manpower Gap. The earliest video that I could find of someone actually doing the Manpower Gap was in 2007 from Northern Parkour. I'm sure there were other people in that era that did the jump, but this was the first one I could find filmed. I've heard from Oleg that he did it in 2006. Unfortunately, it's super hard to find videos from that era. Traveling to Lys to do the Manpower Gap was quickly becoming a benchmark for many freerunners around the late 2000s. However, as time would pass, freerunners would grow hungry to level up manpower. It was all well and good doing the Manpower Gap, but eventually someone would have to raise the bar. Athletes were starting to throw their own spin to the Manpower Gap, such as the freerunner Foski, who put the Manpower Gap into a flowy parkour line. However, everything would change in 2013 with one short clip from Kevin Fleury, with the first ever front flip over the Manpower Gap. Roughly 13 years after the first time Manpower was done, Kevin had finally leveled up the Manpower Gap and done a front flip. And in true freerunner fashion, just 1 year later, Foski would front flip it as well. Surprisingly, it took 2 years for the king of front flip gaps to step up to the plate and do it. And in 2015, Dom Tomato would add himself to the very short list of people who had fronted Manpower. This raise in skill level had freerunners from all over the world scratching their heads thinking, what can we do next? And some pretty strange variations came next. In 2018, a French freerunner from the team Blacklist, by the name of Leo, set out to raise the bar once again. What makes Manpower so scary for most freerunners is the distance that you have to drop. You probably don't need me to tell you this, but taking 2 stories worth of drop doesn't feel very good on your body. So what do freerunners do to lessen that impact? Well, usually they will roll, and the roll will displace the momentum across a further distance. That way your body doesn't take all of the force. However, Leo in 2018 would have other ideas. In 2018, Leo posted a short clip to Instagram of him doing Manpower without a roll. I literally can't imagine how this would feel on that poor man's legs. You might think he would stop there, but very shortly after, Leo wanted to up the ante even more. Leo decided to whip off his shoes and do the Manpower Gap with no shoes and no roll. Taking this kind of impact with no roll is one thing, but to take it with no shoes is just another extreme. I can't imagine many people are hurrying to replicate Leo's achievement. After this, Leo successfully crowned himself the manliest man of Manpower. However, Leo's removal of clothing did inspire one other person, and that person was Max Ward. Max whipped off all of his clothes and became the first person to do the Manpower Gap naked.
3, 2, 1, Josh it!
A little weird, but still a very notable and historic moment in parkour.
Oh, I almost forgot to mention that Max put his clothes back on and became the first person to do Manpower from a hurdle.
Fun and games aside, freerunners were still nowhere near done with leveling up Manpower. In 2017, a freerunner by the name of Harry Davies became the first person to do the standing side flip at the Manpower Gap. Standing side flip gaps are a relatively new thing. Having no momentum in the run-up really makes it hard to clear that distance. So hats off to Harry for doing this gap.
Don't worry, this isn't another sponsored message, but literally a few days ago, another world's first happened at Manpower. This world's first came from a freerunner by the name of Lewis, who became the first person to do the stand-in precision at Manpower from the floor below. Honestly, I'm pretty surprised this one hadn't happened before, but anyway, back to the video.
Oh, if you're wondering what that is, that was from one of my recent videos where I did that pretty nasty bail. How am I gonna get on the Webster? And all this brings us to July 2020. Undoubtedly, the most insane level up to ever happen to Manpower happened literally a few weeks ago. This level up came from a relatively obscure freerunner by the name of Leonardo Roof, who is on a team called Bailed to Roos. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. In July of 2020, Leonardo became the first person ever to gainer the Manpower Gap. Honestly, this level up kind of came out of nowhere. It's not like when Kevin did the first front flip at Manpower. You see, when Kevin did that front flip, doing front flips across roof gaps was quite a popular thing. Like, a lot of people were training them and getting really good at them. What makes Leonardo's gainer all the more impressive is the fact that people don't really do gainer roof gaps. Like, yeah, there's been a few, but typically they're quite small. At least me personally, I've never seen a gainer roof gap like this. I mean, I don't even know what I can say about this. It's so clearly impressive. I can't really add much with words to just how impressive gainering Manpower is. Bail to Roos actually posted a full behind the jump type video on their YouTube channel, which is what inspired this video here. So definitely go check that out. I'll leave a link in the description. In that video, Leo tells us that he'd wanted to do this for at least 4 years, and that effectively he had to create a new technique, which is rolling out of a gainer, which is such a specific and really awkward technique. I don't think I've seen many people roll out of a gainer, because by and large, people don't need to. Very few people are doing gainers that big that you would need to roll out of it. This lad literally created an extendo chainsaw to chop the tree out of the way so he could do the gainer.
Y'a personne?
Leo was clearly on a mission to get this thing done, and thank God he did it. Seeing the smile on Leo's face once he landed the gainer, for me, is one of the most inspiring things about this video. Just seeing how genuinely happy he was doing this thing that he had set out to do for 4 years of his life, to me is honestly touching. He set out to do the impossible, and with sheer trust in his abilities, he did it. The clip of Leo's gainer is sitting at about 154,000 views on Instagram. I really hope these lads ride the momentum from this clip and become something successful in the sport. The thing I've always loved about parkour is it fundamentally comes down to overcoming obstacles and breaking through mental battles over the things that scare you and that you shy away from. With enough practice, you can grow confident in your abilities. And through hard work and a little bit of optimism, you can do things that no one on earth thought possible. From David Bell's first ever leap across Manpower to 2020 with Leonardo's gainer. I honestly can't imagine what is next for Manpower. To be honest, it kind of scares me. I sent a message to a few of my favourite freerunners to see what they thought was next for Manpower.
Vortex front, so 360 front, double side, double front, and the first woman to do it.
Leave a comment below and tell me, what do you think will be the next big level up at Manpower? Personally, I think it will either be a 360 front or a double front flip. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you want to support the channel further, you can support me on my Patreon or by using my affiliate code on the Vipe Ramen website. But until next time, peace.